episode 11 of the Deadlifts and Pizza podcast. No BS Fitness and Nutrition. Good morning.
Morning. Good evening.
Good evening. I just finished dinner. Just like last week.
How was your weekend?
Good. We did nothing.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
This weekend we're going to Mongolia though.
Mongolia.
Of all places to go for a weekend.
Just so random.
Yeah. It felt random because it wasn't like necessarily a place that I had like targeted as somewhere I was like on my list to make sure I go to.
Yeah.
Like I'll never say no to anywhere, but it just wasn't like high up there. But then we were looking for somewhere to travel like at this time of the year because I think that's what it is. The kids have off. Oh, it's Labor Day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. So you're like looking around and it's monsoon season in most of Asia. So it's like hot and muggy and wet and ugh. But I just happened to look up like, where is it not? And like Mongolia, it's sandwiched right in between China and Russia, like a little more north.
Yeah.
Super cool area of the world, you know? And yeah, so it was like, F it. Yeah, the plane tickets were pretty cheap. So we grabbed them and now we're going.
I don't even know what's in Mongolia. Like I have no idea about anything about that country.
There's not like, I mean, there's stuff. There's like the Gobi Desert and obviously like the culture and the people, which is my favorite part of traveling. But we're staying like in like the countryside with like a family that has a bunch of yurts. Have you ever like stayed in a yurt? Or like a yurt is just like a big round like permanent tent.
Yeah.
And so we're staying in like a yurt on some family's like farmland, like some Mongolian family's farmland. And there's no restaurants. We're not anywhere near a city. So like the only food that we'll be eating is whatever they cook for us.
Uh-huh.
Like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like whatever they make for us, which, you know, they have other families travel and come through and stuff. So I'm sure it's not going to be like that outlandish. Like they have to like, you know,
yeah.
But they have like bow and arrows and archery and horses and chickens and cows. And you can like ride the horses out to like there's a Genghis Khan, like memorial statue with like a museum, and they live fairly close to it. So you can like go on horseback to go see the Genghis Khan like statue. So it's going to be a wild experience. I bought like ramen for the kids just in case, keep in my bag. I figured I always had hot water and they have something to eat.
Yeah.
There's not like going to be a store. Like usually when we go to a different country, we can like go to the store. We can go, you know, stop at a restaurant. There's not going to be that in this situation. So it'll be fun. We're only going for a long weekend though. It's only Friday through Monday.
It's basically like camping.
It will be similar, but different. Yeah.
When you said yurt, that's what I pictured, but I was like, I don't know if that's what that is, but yeah.
Yep.
That's funny.
So I'll send pictures. There's no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So we're going to get like a SIM card or something, but you know, we won't really be that connected. So it'll be cool. I'm excited.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds different. A different type of trip for you.
It's probably a little bit more interesting than whatever you're doing this weekend, right?
Yeah. I don't think anything's going on this weekend. Yeah.
How's football going for Caleb?
Good. He's enjoying it. His first game, I think, is the 14th. So soon.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So we keep practicing with him. He's all right.
It's okay, Laura. It's okay.
I don't know if he inherited my athletic abilities. You know.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's a little sad. But he's not like fully helpless. You know, I think he can do stuff, but I don't think he's me, you know.
It is very interesting, like athletic ability and how, like if you look at just my husband and his siblings, it's him and his sister and his brother, and my husband is very naturally athletic and he's just very good at all sports, and I'm not really. Like I was never really an athlete. Like I strength trained for other reasons. I'm medium, I would say, and our son is very medium. Like he likes things, but he's not like go-getter, and he's built like halfway for it, I guess, but not as much as some other kids. And then you have, you know, his brother who's not active at all, and neither is his wife really, and their son is the same way, and daughter too. But then my husband's sister married this like naturally athletic guy who did baseball, and like all of the boys that they have had, which they have 3 of, are all like, I swear they were born like running on the balls of their feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it's wild. Like their bodies were just built for it. And like you said about you when you were little, like they were just attracted to balls right away. They always had
Yeah.
a ball in their hand. And it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. And you definitely can develop it as a child. So you're born with it, but there's certain, like, I don't know, certain things that you can develop when you're a kid by doing all different kinds of sports and things, especially like gymnastics and all of that stuff. But you're also definitely born with it, and it's hard to change that, you know?
Yeah. My daughter has a lot of upper body strength. It's pretty cool. And I think the reason that she has it is because she's always been interested in gymnastics. She doesn't even take gymnastics classes, but she practices every single day. She can do like a roundhouse into the splits and cartwheels, all the things. She can do like
Mm-hmm.
a back bend multiple times over, and she's got a lot of upper body strength.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
Yeah, that too. I'm not like good at that kind of stuff. I could shoot a basketball and throw a ball. Like no one taught me how to throw it. I just did it correctly. You
That's so
know?
interesting.
Yeah. I didn't, I mean, my mom isn't very my mom isn't very athletic, but her family is. Like my grandfather was a minor league baseball player. And then on my dad's side, I don't think very many of them are actually, I don't know. Like he is, like he's athletic, but the rest of his family, I don't know. I mean, my uncle is too, but that's about it. The rest of them, I don't think so. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting.
but
Comes from somewhere.
when we were playing catch outside with the football, Jules will watch us and she'll get like all excited as we're throwing the ball around, and then she wants to play. So she'll grab the ball and she'll like throw it at Wayne and my husband. And it's funny. It's adorable.
Aw.
Yeah.
Can
wants
she
to play
catch it
too.
at all?
No, she's like, it's weird because I've seen her catch things. So if something's falling, she'll catch it. Like she has reflexes to do that. But if I throw the ball at her, it's like she's in her own little world. She's not really paying attention. So she won't try to catch it. But that's one of the things I remember about me as a kid was I had really fast reflexes. So even now as an adult, like if I'm like turning this way and you call and you say my name and there's something like coming at my face, like I'll catch it before,
Ooh,
I have like really
remind me to
fast
test
reflexes.
that next time I see you in person.
And I'll just like, if something falls off a shelf, like I won't like even like bat an eye. I'll just like catch it and put it back and continue doing what I'm doing. Like it's just like, yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I was eating cereal one time at my aunt's house. I was talking to my aunt and my cousin, and I was eating cereal and it was like moving towards the edge of the table. And I was like eating it. It fell as I'm talking to them. And I like reached my hand down, caught it, put it back on the table, and kept eating and talking to them. And they're just both staring at me like, oh, I'm
like without
what?
breaking eye contact, just
yeah,
like
yeah. And they're like, do you realize what you just did? I'm like, no, because I didn't even notice I did it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
What you got for today for the pod?
I just was thinking about something because this weekend, I was thinking about how addicting, and I know people have covered this many times, but like how addicting social media is.
Oh my gosh, dude.
And how good the algorithm is. Like Instagram, I think it's getting better. Instagram knows me so well, and it knows me better than I know me because because I just have to tell you the reels going through my feed over the weekend. And I'm not like a doom scroller for the most part. If I notice I'm like doing that, I'll like stop. But on the weekends, sometimes I can get that way. And so it was, on Saturday, my husband's working and it's just me and the kids, and I get bored sometimes. So I'll be scrolling. And
I'd be scrolling.
yeah. And the things in my feed, there was this video came up, and and it just started with these people standing around, and it looked like what looked like a funeral, right? And I'm like, what is this? And I'm interested. I'm like, I have to keep watching because I'm like, what's going to happen? Why is this here?
I'm hooked.
Right? Yeah. And it's just these people just standing. And then it was a funeral. You could tell like there was a casket, and then there was somebody standing in the aisle, and then someone came up behind them a little bit further behind. And then there were people up towards the front. And all, all of a sudden this music started playing and they all started line dancing. And it wasn't good. Like, it wasn't choreographed very well. It wasn't like professionally done. You know, it was so weird. And then I'm just like looking at the people's faces in like the audience or what, I don't know what you want to call it at a funeral, but the other people and they're
the audience of the funeral.
And
attendees.
Yeah. And they're just like staring at these people, but like with normal looks on their faces. And the one like nods along like, yeah.
This is normal.
And I'm just watching this going, Instagram. Like, why is this in my feed? Right? And then I go to the comments and I'm like, oh, this is why. These are my people. So I go to the comments and it's like all these people, like, I built this algorithm brick by brick, stone by stone.
There was something else you sent me where it was like, no, I'm laughing. It was like I had AI create a country song.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like guns and butts. There's no way to communicate. And the first time I watched it, I was like wondering why you thought this was so funny. And I was watching it going, I would never have sat and watched this if this came out on my feed. I would have scrolled, but I want to know why Laura thinks it's funny. And right before I got out of it, you texted me like, and then I went to the comments and I lost it. I was like, all right, well, let me see the comments. So while I'm reading through the comments, you know, the thing keeps playing and then it starts getting in my head like this country song about guns and butts and trucks and corn. And it's like in my head. And while I'm reading the comments about, it was just stuff like that, like these smart ass, like, sarcastic humor.
Yeah,
it was very funny.
I like that because sometimes I'll go to the comments and all of a sudden it'll be like, we'll be watching a video on, I don't know, some random thing, and you go to the comments and it'll be like, it's Biden's fault, and I'm like, I have to leave now. Like, once like people are always like arguing and bickering, and all of a sudden it turns to politics. But every once in a while there'll be a spot and it'll be like, my people, and the comments were really funny. And it was like somebody was like, I'm on the dark side of Instagram again or something, and then somebody else was like, I built this algorithm brick by brick. Someone else was like, our collective weirdness brought us all here together to this country, to this hoedown funeral or something.
Please leave your name and number. We should get in touch and like have a support group.
I know. And then
that's hilarious.
One more I was going through, there was this kid like leaning on a bridge like this, and he was singing a song, and he's like, you know, not an attractive kid or anything, sitting there like this, telling his story about his high school girlfriend, like in his song, about how they met and then how she left him for another guy. And it was just like this big run-on sentence and like just basically telling the whole story in a song. It was really weird. And I'm like, what is this? Why is this here?
It happens because you watched the entirety of the weird line dancing funeral and then went to the comments, which meant the video looped. And the algorithm was like, I see you. Because I never see stuff like that in my feed. Like, both of those things are nothing like what I see in my feed.
And then I go to the comments and I'm like, yep, there they are again, my people.
My people, man, I'm telling you. You need to, like, create, like, a group. Like, hey, can we exchange numbers? Because, like...
Do you remember the Korean song that I sent you? It was like a Korean song that was translated into American. And the words
into American?
Like into English, I mean.
What is American?
American English.
Confluence of languages.
And then they into American. And then they it didn't make sense because the words, I mean, it made sense, but the words were like, you know, it's not sentences we would say.
You're right.
It was hilarious.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
When you translate Korean to English,
it reminded me of those like sweatshirts that you have, like we're always with you.
It is so silly. Because there's one thing, there's translate, and I think this happens with other Asian languages too, but when you translate Korean to English, it's interesting. But what's even funnier is when Koreans just straight up write English phrases because that's what sells. Like people like to buy things with English phrases on them. So they will write English phrases and like print them on shirts and sell like millions of them. And it doesn't make any sense. It's a combination of complete nonsense and like extreme exaggeration. Like, you know how little kids will have a shirt that will be like, have a bright and happy day, like just little cute phrases. In here, if the shirt is made like in Korea or in Japan, then they take the basic idea of like a motivational phrase on a kid's shirt, but they make it like a paragraph, and it is like, your day will become 100% brighter when you seize the light that is upon you. And then they'll have like 4 of them, and it'll be like 4 giant paragraphs, and there's like a 3-year-old walking around with the shirt on. It's just so, it's so ridiculous. I just want to buy everything when I see like a funny phrase. I'm just like, I need to own that.
The fireman one made me laugh the most. I think it was like, we are always with you, don't be afraid, or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, that's my hoodie. It says, it's like one of those hoodies that has like, it looks like it has a college emblem. You know how there'll be like a college emblem in the middle, and then it'll be like arched writing over the top and arched writing under the bottom. So like the entire image is kind of in the shape of a circle. It said at the top, it had a picture in the middle of firefighters that look like stormtroopers. And then over the top, it says, don't be afraid. And then the bottom text said, we are always with you. And in the middle, under the stormtroopers, it just said firefighter. I can't. I had to go get that sweater because I was like, I need to own this and wear this because it is just so comical.
I feel safe now.
They're always there, Laura.
Always there.
Always with you. Do not be afraid. We're always with you. Firefighter.
But anyway, it's just crazy how addicting it is. And I was thinking about how like apparently like, so you know like, okay, where do I start? So I have a hard time talking sometimes. They're like, when you're scrolling, you end up releasing like a lot of dopamine, because dopamine is released when you are expecting a reward. It's like the motivational like neurotransmitter. And so every time you're like anticipating another video, dopamine gets released, and it can mess with your like sensitivity to that, and make it so you can't like focus and other things. And I feel like so many people feel like they have trouble focusing nowadays. And if they, took a break from social media, that might improve a little bit.
Well, it's interesting too, because you even see it. It's interesting because a lot of kids, and I would argue like teens and adults too, have trouble sitting and watching like a movie because they're so used to. And even if you look at the way movies are made now versus like if you go watch a movie, we watched the old original Karate Kid because we're watching Cobra Kai. If anybody watches Cobra Kai, the show on Netflix, it's so good for a family. Like it's awesome. But I'd never seen Karate Kid, and they're making all these references, and I was like, Donovan, stop the show. I will not continue until I know Karate Kid. So we had to go watch Karate Kid. But the amount of time they spend like on a person talking before they switch to a different scene, and you don't even realize. And then you go watch an old movie, you're like, my God, it feels so slow. But it's because, you watch these movies now, and they're very quickly changing scene. There's very few like monologues when somebody is just talking for long periods of time.
Yeah, they make movies.
It's interesting.
Now. It is.
Yeah.
Caleb doesn't watch too many movies with us. He's just, because he's so used to YouTube where they do that. It's like and I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good for our
our brains. I mean, we're pretty strict with YouTube, and it's hard to explain. I mean, there's a problem with the content on YouTube some of the times, but it's also like that desire to just keep going. And I've talked to my kids about that, but I see like little 2-year-olds and like 3-year-olds just sitting there scroll. I'm like, you're literally training them. It's just not good for their developing brains, but that is a different topic.
Anyway, so it just hoodle mimics, that ADHD, because that's what people with ADHD have trouble regulating dopamine, and that's why they can't focus and concentrate, and they don't have that motivational, thing to keep them going. So I feel like so many people feel like they have it, and it's just like, get off social media and you'll probably be better.
That's very true. That's very true. When before I got on medication, because it's been I was on medication before. Just as a brief background, when I was in college and I finally got diagnosed, I was on medication for like 2 years, which got me through college, and then I was off it. So now I'm back on, and it's been, I want to say, like 2 months, maybe almost three. And that was one of the things that I told you, this analogy. But before, focusing on my work and concentrating felt like somebody was holding me underwater. And so I could go underwater. I have the ability to, but I literally can't stay there because I'll die. So I have to come up for air. And me coming up for air was like a 15, because I have a timer set on my phone for like scrolling. I just have a 15-minute like time limit. And it would be like, okay, I'm in a 15-minute scroll, and then, okay, back to it. But then I'm back underwater. So now I don't do that anymore at all. It's like that has vanished completely. I don't scroll at all like during the day, unless I like want to know the news and I'll go look at Sharon Says So, her feed. Other than that, I don't scroll. And it's like the biggest change, because now it feels like, it doesn't feel like I'm being held underwater. It feels like I'm treading water. So it's still hard. Like work is still hard. And it's harder depending on how fast I'm, kicking or, whatever, or how long you're doing it. And I definitely am tired when I get out of the water, but I can breathe. So I'm breathing the whole time, and I'll take a break in the middle and get out and lay in the sun and then get back in and tread water. But it's so much more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That dopamine, man.
Mm-hmm. Dopamine and estrogen. We're going to
talk about
We're going to transition
to hormones.
Not smoothly. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like, I don't know if I have a lot to say about this, but I haven't talked to you about this yet. I've been more interested in the research that I feel like, I don't even know if I want to say emerging, because I feel like it's kind of been there happening, but it just isn't talked enough about, of like women, active women, nutrition, strength training, and all that stuff. Like the large, vast majority, almost everything, studies and stuff that you see is done on men, right? We don't have a lot of studies that are done on women. And so, Dr. Stacy Sims, right? I follow her on Instagram, and I've been kind of delving a little bit deeper into her stuff. And I'm not to a place yet where I feel like super confident in a lot of my knowledge. But what is really interesting is just some of the stuff that is fundamentally different about the way women's bodies operate. And I remember when I went down a little bit of the fasting rabbit hole when I was writing an article on intermittent fasting, I do remember reading and finding some studies that were done on women that seemed to point to the idea, which kind of makes sense logically when you think about it, that our bodies are just more sensitive to like endocrine dysfunction or like hormone disruption than men are. We have more fluctuating hormones, and then we're more sensitive. Our body's more sensitive. Our whole endocrine system is more sensitive to the stressors that we put on it, right? And so in general,
Because we have babies.
Yeah. That whole baby making thing, I think, definitely plays into it. But yeah, so fasting in particular, like intermittent fasting and time restricted feeding and all the different things that fall under that intermittent fasting umbrella, is generally not recommended for women based on that study. But then there's other studies that show maybe, but these were like obese women. And so there's a lot of like, it's hard to kind of pick out. But my conclusion walking away after I wrote that article was like, I don't really think it's that great for women. And everything that Dr. Stacy Sims is kind of putting out is reflective of that. She's actually very against intermittent fasting. And when she talks about intermittent fasting, she's talking about longer windows. She's talking about like a full day of fasting and stuff like that. But then she touched on, but for the same reason, basically that, and she gave numbers to it. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about, I'm going to misquote it, I'm sure, but it was like the way that our bodies respond to lower calorie intake. And it was something like men's endocrine systems don't see dysfunction until they've cut, it was like in half or by half of the calories that they should be eating. It was like half, like half. We keep saying half over and over again. But for women, it was like a third. It was something like that. It was like 0.3 versus 0.5. And I don't have the numbers correct, but essentially our bodies are more sensitive to calorie restriction, severe calorie restriction, and our endocrine systems are more sensitive to that. And not only that, this made me think of you, and it's not a big topic to talk about yet because I don't have enough, I feel like, information and data to go off of. But she's a huge proponent of making sure you have something in the morning if you're going to be strength training, especially for women 40 and beyond. So she talks about like when we're aging, our bodies just change, and it becomes more and more important to basically optimize nutrition and training because of the fluctuation in the hormones and the dramatic decrease in estrogen. And she was talking about how this whole anabolic window post training, like we generally know, there really isn't one, but it seems that there actually probably is one for women over 40. And that having that 30 to 40 grams of protein, like within an hour after training, for somebody who is in a position already where their body wants to kind of get rid of muscle and not really preserve that seems to be extremely beneficial. And so I just find that really fascinating.
I guess once it becomes a problem, I'll worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, she talked too about like eating before you work out, because she's saying, you know, obviously cortisol is it peaks like 30 minutes after you wake up, and that's normal and good because we need cortisol. But there are things that we do in the morning, like women tend to do in the morning, that can keep cortisol like elevated longer than it needs to be. And one of those is she is like doing extreme exercise, or intense exercise, I should say, without having any food in our system. And that like 20s, 30s, you can, it's kind of, maybe it's fine, but like post 40, we really need to have like 15 grams of protein, small amount, 15 grams of protein, a little bit of carb. It's like you could get away with like an intra workout drink. You know what I mean? Like you get the carbohydrate, glucose, the protein that your body kind of needs. But it was just very interesting. It's very interesting kind of delving into that a little bit more. And I am very intrinsically motivated to continue, because I just find the whole like topic and delving into women specifically and all of these topics that we know so much about already from like a big picture perspective, like really digging down a little bit and say, well, this does look different for women. How is it different for women? And I'm just, going down that a little bit more.
Does it matter if you eat right after?
I don't know yet.
Like, so if I don't eat before, but I eat right after, I mean, I do have carbs in my, I do have carbs in the morning, which should lower that cortisol.
What do you have in the morning? You mean right after or before?
Right after my workout. I have like a shake.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a smoothie.
I don't know 100%. My instinct still says, I think that it's a good idea to have some circulating glucose and amino acids before you train. I think so.
I feel crappy if I eat before I work out.
Well, like I said, like an intra-workout drink is like a great, what I used to do was orange Gatorade powder with a half a scoop of vanilla protein and with like a lot of water. It makes like a creamsicle like drink. Yeah. I mean, there's, again, like it's one of those things where if you're good and that process makes you feel bad, and then I'm still very much a believer, like it's fine, Yeah. And again, like if you start to feel bad or notice, negative outcomes, then, maybe look at that. But if you feel great.
Well, what's the negative of it besides the cortisol part? Is there another negative?
Well, one of the things that I heard her say too was she'll come across people who say, well, I've fasted for years. Like I've done it this way. I've trained fasted or have been intermittent fasting or whatever for years, and I feel fine. And she says, well, how much better would you feel though if you did it this way? Because again, she says a lot of it has to do with when we're getting older too, like just things kind of changing, like the game changes a little bit for women when we get older. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'm just
there was something else. It was something about, I think there was a study, and again, do not quote me because I'm probably getting this wrong and maybe I can come back with better information next week, but there was like a study done with obviously, and it's mostly active women. Like she's not looking at sedentary women. She's like specifically talking about women who are active and being able to optimize that. So there was someone in a study where she was talking about when you're looking at like RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or reps in reserve, or even like 1 rep max, and all those numbers and all that data that you can get from somebody training intensely, that it was something like the difference between somebody who just had like a 15 grams of protein and like 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate versus somebody who didn't and trained fasted. They were able to tease out that it was like a 2 to 4% difference in the load that they were actually able to lift.
Mm-hmm.
And which obviously it's like creatine. It's going to be this tiny little bit of a difference that you might not even notice, but your body notices and it affects your results. So this is like, basically progress that women are leaving on the table.
It can add up over time.
Yeah.
I think I saw like a clip with her. Is she the one that said that when you're younger, training close to failure is more important? And then as you get older, lifting heavier weights is more important.
Yeah.
Like doing like strength training.
Yeah. And one of the reasons for that is because it is just so much harder it's harder for women to put on muscle mass, like slabs of muscle, right? Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get older, it becomes even harder. So really leaning into the strength side instead of thinking of it from like this, more hypertrophy side. There's a lot of benefits to that.
I want to I want to continue to train for power as much as possible, because I know that's the first thing that goes as you get older.
Yeah, that's what she was saying, power and strength post 40. So good stuff.
Yeah,
I love
it. I'm not going to change anything, but still interesting.
I'm not changing. I like to hear about it.
I'm one of those people that it's like, I don't pay attention to if it's something that's, I don't know, I just don't pay attention to little things as much as the big picture. And I feel like if I'm working out, that's the important part. But later on I might feel, like maybe I need to eat, but right now I feel great,
Yeah.
So. And
I feel like that's a mistake a lot of people make, is focusing too much on all the little stuff before they've mastered all the big stuff.
Yeah. And if it's going to make me all like, then, because that's the noise I'll make, then I won't. Then I try not to worry about it.
So I was having a conversation, another interesting topic. I was having a conversation with a client the other day, and she was telling me about something she was proud of that happened. She was telling me that while she was working out, one of her 4 kids came in just noshing on a bag of popcorn, and she was telling her something about her day. Like they got involved in this conversation, and my client went to put her hand in the bag to also nosh on the popcorn while they were chit-chatting, with her daughter in the gym. And she stopped herself. And that was what she was really proud of. She was like, I was, whoa, whoa. She said, I pulled my hand out of the bag and I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. And my daughter said, what, you don't want any popcorn? And she was like, no, I do. I just don't want to eat 7 cups of it, because that's what I will do if I sit here and just nosh on it and talk to you. And so she paused the conversation, went and got like a measuring cup or some kind of measuring apparatus, like portioned herself out a serving, and then continued with the conversation, like eating the popcorn. And she was proud of herself for doing that. And I thought that was awesome too. But the thing that I thought was interesting and is an interesting topic of conversation, and I hear this a lot, is people having this fear. So I commended her on not having this fear, but a lot of people have this fear of their kids seeing them like portion out and weigh out their food. And they say things like, I don't want my, daughter seeing me doing this. I think it's instilling bad habits. Or what do you think about my kids seeing me doing this? Or whenever we're going to do a boot camp or a challenge, I always have some people that are like, can my daughter join? I don't know if I want her, weighing anything out or seeing me weighing anything out. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of those things where the pendulum kind of swings too far in the other direction, where it used to be, you don't want to be instilling these horrible habits on your children of like being so, all the anxiety around food and always watching what you eat and whatever. But also you don't want to go the other direction where it's like, well, eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter. So measuring out your food, I don't think is a bad habit to have. So I don't think that would be something that would be, negative to be doing in front of your children.
Right.
That's how I feel.
I'm the pendulum swing. Like that's exactly how I feel it is. And because as somebody and I feel like this happens a lot in parenting, as parents, we experienced something in our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have kids, we want so badly for that to be different for our kids, but we go the complete other direction when the entire situation might not be like applicable to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so a very tiny example is my mom was never allowed to go away to college. And she wanted to so badly, and she missed out on that experience. And so she pushed going away to college so hard on me, and I did not want to go. And this is like a minor example. This did not affect me psychologically in the least.
Yeah.
But it's just an example that she was pushing me so hard, and I was just the type of kid, like a teenager, whatever, that was not cut out to be like in a dorm room, like on a campus. Like, no way. But she just really wanted, and was like sad and disappointed when I wasn't. So it's just very interesting. I think it's similar with this. And as a mom whose main concern when having a daughter was making sure she did not have the same issues I did, I get it. Like, I totally get it. I've thought a lot. Like, I've stayed up at night thinking, and I don't stay up at night. You know me. I have stayed up at night, like thinking about how I can make sure, of course, both my kids, but specifically my daughter, like doesn't grow up with the same things I did. And I really came to that conclusion that just because I had those experiences, there's a myriad of reasons why I suffered with eating disorder and disordered eating habits and hatred of my body. There's a lot of reasons why. And almost all of those reasons just don't apply to my daughter and the way that she's growing up and the things that she has around her. And so if I push really hard in the other direction and try really hard to make sure that she constantly telling her that she's beautiful and perfect and your body is great and all these things about her physical appearance and you should eat whatever you want because all food is good, like that's not necessarily a good message either, because in the world that she's surrounded in right now, which is so different than mine, it's just not applicable and it's going to do more harm than good. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's important to like try to remember that middle ground. And the reality is, as much as we don't want our kids to grow up, and also for us in general, like of the generation that we're in, that was kind of the generation that we grew up in was like, I call it like fitness and nutrition trauma, you know, it was like all about being as skinny as possible and women weren't lifting and all this stuff. And we're just somewhere different now. Like the amount of young teenage and young 20s women that are in the gym lifting it's like enormous. It's crazy. Like you never would have seen it. So the world that our kids are growing up in is totally different. You had the, health at every size movement that I feel like now the pendulum is swinging back a little bit more, but we have so much more body acceptance. It's just a totally different world. And so I think it's a good thing. And for your kids to see you managing your nutrition.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you deliver it. Because if your kid is like, why are you measuring that out? If you say, because I'm a fat ass and I need to lose weight and I hate myself, then that's what your kid is that's the message that they're going to grow up around. But if your reasoning is, I want to make sure that I eat enough for my body's like energy needs, then it's a different story. Like what message are we sending our kids now?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's the middle. It's always balance. It's always the middle. It's never one extreme or the other. Most things are never purely bad or good,
Right. Yeah, that's always true. The gray zone. Yeah. But also like your messaging. And I also think it's really good from a pure like health standpoint, physical health, not mental health, but like a physical health standpoint, the amount of food that especially Americans eat based on things being highly palatable and convenient, mm-hmm. like, and then, equaling poor health outcomes. Yeah. It's just that we have a lot of like highly processed, like convenient fast foods. And so using weighing and measuring as a tool to educate yourself more about like the nutrition that's in whole foods, like that's a great message to send to your kids. Like, I'm weighing this out because I'm actually not sure how much fiber or protein this has. And I'm learning about that so that when I'm trying to build my own meals and be healthy, I can eyeball these things and know that I'm getting enough in the future. It's a measuring tool, right?
Yeah, exactly. This reminds me of a story that is kind of off topic. It's just a random side tangent, but it's funny. So, is that okay?
Do tell.
Okay.
No, it's not okay. So next thing I was going to talk about. No, go ahead.
It's short. So just thinking about like the diets and things that our parents did, right? Mm-hmm. My mom was always doing exercise videos and like, aerobics mm-hmm. things and trying all these diets, right? And one Christmas, it was like my mom and my dad are separated when I was 3, right? So I was over at my dad's house, and he was going through like old records. And every Christmas, I would always give my mom like a random present, because this is my sense of humor. Just like that random video I found hilarious. It's just I like to make people go, what? Like, so I always used to give her like some random present that was like, what is this, right? So I was at my dad's, and he was going through his old records, and there was one of Richard Simmons. And I was like, this used to be my mom's, right? So I wrapped it up and gave it to her for Christmas. And and I explained the story. She thought it was hilarious, and she was dying laughing, because she was like, this must have been mine.
When did you do that?
It was, a couple years ago. I don't know. It was a
So
while
like
ago.
adulthood.
Yeah.
One time when I was I had to be like 13, like old enough to know better, but I was what do they call a late bloomer in a lot of ways. As my mom's birthday present, I recorded a song on the radio on a cassette tape for her, and it was an R&B song, and I don't remember who it was by, but God. The song was "You Are the Queen of My Heart." I was like, "You are the queen of my heart," and I think that was like the chorus, and that was the only reason I was like, my mom is totally the queen of my heart. It's like I recorded it for her, but I don't know what the lyrics in between were. Like they were probably very like not appropriate for your mom, and I wrapped it up. I was like a legit like 13-year-old teenager, and I handed her this cassette tape, and she like listened to it, and I remember her just being like, "Oh, thanks, honey." I was like, "You're welcome. Why don't you love it more than you do?"
See, I would have did that same thing, but for a different reason.
But you would have meant it. That's the difference.
Just for that exact reaction. Oh.
That's so sweet, honey. It's the best present I ever gave my mom. She couldn't appreciate it. All right, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
A really good one. Well, I have two, but I don't know if we'll have time for them, which is fine.
Okay.
Somebody asked, which one should I choose? I'm going to choose this one. Somebody asked me recently, how do I increase the weight on shoulder presses if the 10s feel easy, but the 15s are way too heavy? And why does that happen anyway?
Well, because shoulders are a small muscle, so it takes a while. That's why it happens. Do you know what rep range she's doing?
So this particular person was doing in the 8 to 10 rep range with 10 pounds.
So I would recommend
and I'll add on to that, was in the 8 to 10 rep range with 10 pounds, but doing 10 reps. Mm-hmm. So in the 8 to 10 rep range, but hitting 10 reps for every set.
There's a couple options, because it doesn't really matter, when it comes to, it depends. Is she trying to get, well, most of the time you're trying to do both, right? Get stronger and build muscle. But it doesn't really matter what rep range you're really in for building muscle, right? So you could stick with the 10s and just get closer to failure and not be in that rep range, that 8 to 10 rep range. So you can go do 12 reps, do 13 reps, whatever you can do. And then eventually you might be able to do the 15s in that 8 to 10 rep range. Or you can do the 15s, and if you can do like at least 5 of them, do it that way, and you should get stronger faster.
Yeah.
So you have a couple options.
That was one of the things I told her, was that, can you do the 15s at all? She said, yeah, but I can only do like 6 of them. So I said, well, one thing you could do is do 6 of them.
Yeah, that's
and
perfect.
Then just aim to get within that 8 to 10 rep range. Mm-hmm. I said another option was you could do 6 of those and then switch back to your 10s and finish out the reps up to 10 with that. So you'd be doing 6 with the 15s and then 4 with the 10s.
Like a little mini drop set.
Yeah, pretty much like a little mini drop set. And then eventually you'll, like, every time kind of try to do that 7th rep with the 15s, and eventually you'll get it. And then eventually you'll fall in that 8 to 10 rep range as you kind of get stronger. Mm-hmm. Lots of options. But this connected to me today too, because I was doing lateral raises. And it's funny with lateral raises, and obviously this makes sense. but it drives me nuts because if I do a single arm lateral raise while my other arm is holding on to like my squat cage and like slightly leaning, I can do I think they're 22 pounds. I can do 22-pound lateral raises for 10 reps. But if I'm standing straight up holding 22s in both of my hands, I can't do them for lateral raises. And it's so frustrating because I don't want to do single because it takes longer. I can get them both done with 2, but I can't because I literally can't lift the things up for more than maybe 1 rep. Whereas I can get like 8 to 10 if I'm like leaning. It's really interesting.
You could do 22 pounds with lateral
Yeah,
raises?
because it's my 10 kilograms. It's a 10-kilogram dumbbell.
That's way more than I do.
My smallest dumbbell is a 6-kilogram, which is 12-ish pounds. And then my next smallest is a 10.
I feel
that's 22 pounds.
I feel like if I go too heavy with those, I will recruit my traps and other things. Yeah. So I try not to go like super heavy with them. So I don't know. I've never done that high. But I like the leaning ones because you get more of a stretch at the bottom.
I love them, but and I did that last week, but today I just did not want to. I wanted to do them double and I couldn't. And again, I could have if I'd used momentum in my traps, but I in the past spent a lot of years lifting wrong and I have, in my opinion, overdeveloped traps because of it. I don't really like how big my traps are. So I'm trying really hard. Like I really focus on not bringing my traps into movement. So I really don't want to do that, obviously. But So I was refusing a couple of things. I refused to do them single arm because it just wasn't going to happen. And I was refusing to use my traps to get them up or do 2 little reps. So I was in the situation where I had my 12 pounds, but I could do 10 real easily. It wasn't that challenging. So what do I do? And so what I did, which is one of my favorite things to do when something feels too easy, but you're not quite ready for the next weight either, is just add a pause. Just add a pause at the most intense place of the movement. You think your squats are too light? Just stop at the bottom for a second before you come back up. Don't bounce out of it. Those lateral raises, don't just bring them up and let them fall back down. Bring them up and hold them there for a count of 1 or maybe even 2, and then slowly bring them back down. Totally different movement at that point. And so just by doing that, I'd bring them out, hold that for like a good second, and then slowly lower for a count of 3 or 4. And 10 I was burning by the end of 10.
Yeah. Or just slow down the eccentric of it. Yep. Yeah. That's what I do too.
Did both of those things.
I slow it down. I don't usually pause, but I slow it down when things get too easy. And then I can't.
When I find myself bouncing at the bottom of squats, and usually not with like a barbell squat, I usually allow a little bit more of I call it a bounce, but I'm not actually bouncing. But you know what I mean? As soon as you hit depth, you come back up. With a barbell squat, I'm more okay with it, mainly because in a barbell squat, typically my goal is to get stronger. So I'm not as concerned about little stuff like that. But when I'm doing like a goblet squat or something, like today I was doing heel elevated goblet squats to really hit my calves so I can grow them bigger than you. And I was like noticing that I was just kind of bouncing in the bottom. So I would purposely stop just like a hair before I hit actually like maximum depth. I would just stop for a full second and then press out of it. Oh my goodness. So much harder.
Yeah, definitely. Messing with the tempo. Yeah, that's another one. I didn't think about that either. That could be another, more advice is slowing it down.
Yep. Yeah. Slow it down, play with the tempo. And then obviously when you really get into, this kind of drifts into a little bit for people who like only have dumbbells and don't have barbells, which not only is limiting because you just don't have as many options for weight, but it's also just limiting because normally once the dumbbells get up to a certain weight, you just can't really hold on to them that long, which is where a barbell becomes very handy. But there's people obviously that have just dumbbells at home and they want to be able to gain strength and get stronger. And that's where little things like this, like playing around with the tempo, the way that you pair exercises, this is where you can get into kind of supersetting like muscle groups, but in like a smart way, doing like pre-exhaust or post-exhaust sets. So before going into those shoulder presses for this person, before going into the shoulder presses with the 10s, maybe if she did some like lateral raises or, some kind of banded shoulder focus thing that doesn't feel kind of burn out almost your shoulders a little bit before going into shoulder presses, those 10s are going to feel way heavier. So there's like little things that you can do, right? But
Yeah. Usually the shoulders isn't the one that people, have trouble getting enough weight for, as long as you have a decent amount of dumbbell weight. It's more like your legs and
Mm-hmm.
your chest, back, that
Oh
kind of
yeah, when
stuff.
we're talking about just having enough weight, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where you have to get creative with people who just have dumbbells. Because I'll see people, my clients, all the time in the beginning when they're first starting out, and they'll be doing a weight week 1, week 2. Okay, I accept it. Then by week 3, I'm like, I guarantee you are like 5 times stronger than you think you are. Like, go pick up that barb. I see in your video. I was telling someone the other day, I can see bumper plates back there. Put them
Yeah.
on the barbell. She's like, you're too heavy. I was like, no, they're not. I promise you. Just put them on the barbell.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's a deadlift. You already are strong enough. I promise.
Yeah. I think people are nervous with deadlifts.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. My mom sees me doing a barbell with 10 plates on each side, and she's like, you can just lift hundreds of pounds all in your lower back like that? Like, there's so much wrong with what you said.
Hundreds of pounds.
Not hundreds of pounds, and it's not in my low back. If it is, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Was that your last topic?
I have another question, but I think I'll save it for next time.
Oh, okay.
It was
You
a
sure?
good it's got some meat to it, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. We'll save
Yeah.
it. Just remember it.
Yeah, I'll save
Don't
it.
forget it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't rely on my memory.
Yeah, that's right. I do. You don't.
I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about how, because I think my daughter was commenting on how I forget stuff so easily, but then once I forget it really easily, I tend to remember it really well. And I was like, well, that's because I don't rely on my memory. As soon as I do remember it, I put it somewhere and I allow technology to tell me. And then I put
Yeah.
alarms upon alarms to make
That's
sure that I
helpful.
don't forget the thing.
Yeah. Very helpful.
So I will forget, but we will also talk about it because it will be right here on my notes.
I have one more quick topic if you want, because we
Hit
have
me.
like some time. It's just something random that I just remembered now, because I do rely on my memory and don't write things down. So that's why mine's all like convoluted and whatever.
It sounds awful. I used to live that way. It makes me
way.
shudder. My life sucked because I never made it anywhere on time. I missed things. Bank account overdrawn. Relationships awful. And now I thrive because I just learned that I can't trust myself.
Yeah, I'm not good with like appointment. It depends. Like certain things I'm bad with, and certain things I'm fine with. So appointments are terrible. I do put those in my calendar because I will forget.
Yeah.
Okay, this is random, but the other day, it's getting cooler here, right? So the other day I put jeans on for the first time, right? I haven't worn jeans in a while. And and my ass is huge. I swear.
Is it bigger than it was last fall?
I think it is. And it's so funny because, like, after we did the power building program that we did together, I remember after that I was like, holy crap, my ass is just ginormous. It's way bigger than it used to be. And that wasn't even the goal, right? And what it reminds me of is it's so funny that there's so many programs out there that are supposed to be for glute growth and like people having trouble growing their glutes, when in reality it is it depends on the person, right? It's genetics, but it is generally one of the easiest muscles to grow, and it gets targeted so much because if you do any exercises that are for your quads, generally your glutes are going to be in that exercise also. And if you do exercises for your hamstrings, your glutes are going to be in those also. So they get like double hit. So it's very hard to not do very minimal volume for your glutes. Like my butt is just growing way bigger than everything else.
Oh heavens, you poor dear.
I know.
Well, you know what people's problem is mainly? For the most part, it's activation.
You think so?
Of their glutes. People are sitting with in a stretch. Their glutes are in a stretched position. And when you got like sleepy, like unactivated glutes that are not used to being primarily like you do have other muscles that will pick up the work of your glutes. And I think a lot of people really have trouble understanding how to incorporate. And then once you do, though, I think you're like this. I can't not feel my glutes. Like I feel them when I walk, I can
Yeah.
feel like them contracting. They're just so turned on. You could go so many places with that.
They're so turned on.
My glutes are so turned on.
All day.
All day.
Yeah, I should do that in that voice. Yeah, that's true. I feel like the more you work out, though, the more that would improve. The more you actually train them, the better, the more connection you would have with them. I just find it funny.
Sure. Yeah.
That there's all these, less, because I've heard of some people who say they don't want to grow their legs any bigger, but they just want to grow bigger. But that's when it becomes a little bit more challenging. But I don't think most people are like that, though. I don't understand that either. It's just like the scrunch butt leggings things. Like, why do you want this? Why do you want this ginormous ass and like these little legs? It just doesn't look proportional.
Yeah.
I feel like proportion is attractive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, some people naturally feel like they don't have, like, if you naturally have meatier legs, but your butt's just smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see situations where somebody might want to activate that more and take quads out of it, take hamstrings out of it, maybe a little bit. Like, how do I do that? Yeah, that becomes a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, I'm like looking to get these big, juicy, like, thighs.
Yeah, me too.
Watermelon crushers.
It's just funny.
Yeah,
because my glutes are fine. I don't ever need to do a program just for those. I
feel the same.
That would be overkill.
Yeah, I feel like I don't wear jeans, but I'm totally fine with the size of my rear.
Yeah. Anyway, just a random.
All right, for two people
topic
that had nothing to talk about, I feel like we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for listening. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Tell us how much you liked it so that we can get the word out to other people.
Bye.